Thank you, Kevin. I actually want to give my spot over to Mark so that he can entertain us again. That was an incredible force de tour that you've just given us, Mark, and covered so many of the issues in humorous but serious fashion. I just also want to say a couple of words about my fellow panellists. First of all, a huge thank you to the Daily Mirror and to Ros United. So proud to be associated with you. And of course, the Daily Mirror continues its long tradition of supporting ordinary working people. And I want you, Kevin and Ros, to take our thanks back to your editorial team for that. I also just want to say a quick word about Cheryl Lee. You know, famous people can very easily find the safeness of the shadows when controversial issues are on the table. It's very brave for them to come out and to pin their colours to the mast. And I want to tell you, Cheryl Lee, I really appreciate what you and colleagues like you do. There's not many of you who are prepared to make that argument, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you very much indeed. And incidentally, Corrie is my favourite soap as well. And to Poppy, I want to thank you, Poppy. You're currently training to be a social worker in order to give back a service to the public. And I want to thank you for the work that you're going to do. You're going to join a band of people who teach our children, heal our sick, care for our vulnerable, look after and encourage our youth, clean our streets, collect our refuge. The very people who create the fabric of the communities that we live in, and yet are vilified by these chinless wonders of the elite. How dare they attack our people? But that's why we gather today, in order to seek confidence. Confidence is the most important word in my experience that I've ever come across. And it's the absolute responsibility of leadership to give confidence. And all of us in this room are leaders. All of us have the opportunity to go back to our communities and our workplaces and raise the consciousness and give ordinary people the belief in their power. The power of the people. You know, it was Gandhi who said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. That could be the narrative for our anti-austerity campaign. And it's something that we need to constantly tap into. We need to remind ourselves that this government, who are currently giddy with the fluke victory that they achieved on May the 7th, was only elected by 36% of those that voted. Actually, 25% of the electorate. 64% of people who voted on May the 7th voted against the Tories, rejected the Tories and their ideological dogma. And we need to constantly remind ourselves of that, because sometimes you can feel debilitated and defeated. And of course, the establishment, through their mouthpieces in the right-wing media, some of which are with us today, constantly drip feed that to make people feel that there's nothing that they can really do. And it's our task to make it clear that there is something we can do. You know, after the defeat on May the 7th, you could understand that people might have been a little bit down and wondered what was next. But there is a resistance out there. Within a few weeks of that defeat, the People's Assembly put 250,000 people on the streets of London. 250,000, it staggered everybody, staggered the police, and I'm sure it raised a few eyebrows amongst the establishment. 250,000 people, an enormous amount of young people. A week later, at the Durham Miners' Gala, 200,000 people attended, the biggest attendance in living memory. And a week after that, the same happened at the Tolpuddle Martyrs rally, the largest march ever. And that sends a signal out that people are not prepared to accept what is currently going on. And that's why it was right for Mark to talk about what is happening throughout the world as well. In Greece, in Spain, across Europe at the moment, people are rejecting the austerity measure that is being pumped out, even in America. Bernie Sanders, their very own Jeremy Corbyn, is actually attracting audiences of 30 and 40,000 in football stadiums. It's quite astonishing, because the message going out is, we don't accept what's happening. And then, of course, we had the summer of Jeremy Corbyn, or JC, as somebody gave them the... And you know, it was extraordinary. I've been a member of the Labour Party for 45 years. I've never known anything like it. And Mark hit it spot on. Why? Not only did it happen, but why was the reaction? Day after day after day after day after day after day, vilification of Jeremy Corbyn, attacking him in every conceivable way. The whole of the establishment, including the Labour Party establishment. You know, the grandees sunning themselves on their multi-billionaire friends' yachts. My message to them is, stick to counting your money somewhere. But they did it, as Mark said, because it challenged for the first time the political dogma that has absolutely spread across the globe for the past 30-odd years of neoliberalism. You'll recall this kind of evil phrase, Tina, there is no alternative. That was first heard back in the 1980s, when Thatcher was destroying our industries, destroying our communities, the biggest act of criminal industrial sabotage within our history, and we were told there is no alternative. And it carried on for decade after decade after decade. There is no alternative. Well, what Jeremy's come along and done, he's put an end to Tina, a funeral, if you like, for Tina, and the birth of Tiara. There is a real alternative. And of course, it is that real alternative that they are afraid of. They do not want the discussions taking place in our communities, in our households, in the media and in our workplaces, that hang on, there's a different way to run our society than the way we're currently running it, where the poor and the needy are attacked, where workers don't get a real share of their wealth. The amount of money from our GDP, our gross domestic product, that now goes into the back pockets of workers has dropped by over 12%. By over 12% in the last 20 years. Now, economists amongst you will know and tell you that that is disastrous, absolutely disastrous. From 65% of our GDP going into people's back pockets, it's now down to 53%. And it's disastrous for the economy, for a sustainable economy. The only way that you can get sustainable growth in an economy is if you have real jobs, real investment, real working people who live in those communities actually spending their money so it raises everybody's living standards. That's the argument that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell will now put forward, and that is what frightens the elite. Mark, absolutely spot on once again. You know, when they tell us, oh, things are bad, you've got to tighten your belt, and, oh, you know, we had the crisis, the crash in 2008. It's not that the wealth has disappeared. We're as wealthy as we ever were. Don't let anyone tell you that there's no money out there. Currently, there's £1/3 trillion sitting in the banks. Who we give that money to? protecting themselves instead of lending and investing in our communities. That's why you'll hear John MacDonald talk about a British investment bank, so that we can start investing in our communities again. Wealth is there, stacks of money is there, and it is a political decision by this government to make certain that it goes to the people that they are in power for. A government of the rich and for the rich, and we need to constantly remind our people that there is now an alternative. And Jeremy will no doubt continue to be attacked by the media. I've no doubt that mistakes will still get made, but so what? We're all human, and that includes our Labour leadership. And Poppy was right when she said she was ashamed of our leadership last time agreeing to various things that she couldn't get her head round. She was right when we had the temporary leader of our Labour Party abstaining on the welfare bill. How disgraceful was that? I sent a letter to Harriet explaining the definition of opposition. It's to oppose, not to agree bits and pieces. But no, things have changed. You can actually feel it here in a Labour conference. For the first time for a long time, I've arrived at a Labour Party conference figuring out that, well, I don't have to oppose the leadership. How can I not oppose them? How can I judge my words properly so that I don't get picked up by the media who are constantly looking for division? I come along to Brighton this time. I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's the first time. I used to say, before I became General Secretary, when I was a young shop steward and a bit of a militant, and people think I'm a militant now, you should have seen me then. And I used to be able to just go and enjoy conferences, and I'd say to my friends now, I just can't enjoy conferences anymore. Well, actually, I'm going to enjoy this one in Brighton this week, despite mistakes that may be made, because the democracy within our party, you can feel it. You can feel it beginning to seep in. You can feel people saying, do you know what, I want to be part of this. Again, Mark's point about the massive amount of people that have been drawn into the party, it is extraordinary. This morning, the point was made that our party now, 400,000, growing all the time, going to hit the 500,000 mark soon, as opposed to the Conservative Party membership, which they won't disclose to us because it's that low. And that is an indication that we are a movement. And this is important. They're not a movement. We stand for optimism versus the narrow drinking club of the elite. That movement is something we need to nurture. We also need to understand that Jeremy Corbyn and John MacDonald don't have magic wands. They're not going to wave it and make everything better, either internally in the Labour Party or in our society overnight. We have to work with them. We have to make certain that our input about the real world is something that they can tap into. We have a leadership whereby, for the first time, understand the real world. They live in the real world. Previous leaderships, we've had to explain the real world for them. You know, it's not quite like that. It's actually like this. Well, we should draw from that type of developments. We should make certain that amongst us, we go out into our communities, whoever we represent, and we try to say, yes, mistakes will be made, but don't get defeatist. Make certain that we understand one thing, and one thing is very important, that courage can be contagious, and hope can take on a life of its own. And you know what I say to you all here, be strong in your own ideals. Be strong in those ideals, because in the summer we shook the establishment. And you know what? I've got a feeling in the years to come we will shake them to their very core and create a Britain and a Europe and a world that we can be proud of.